I reread The Chamber of Secrets as an adult, and I never realized this as a child, but there are so many plot holes. However, did I love rereading it again? Of course I did. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of the big plot holes that I saw, some things that I noticed this time around that I never noticed before reading these books, and then finally some things I absolutely love from this book, as I'm sure we all do. The plot hole number 1. So the first plot hole that I noticed is when they can't get into platform 9 3/4, Harry and Ron pretty spectacularly go and get the old Ford Anglia and they fly that car into Hogwarts, famously crashing into the Whomping Willow. A really big deal was made in the later books about how it's impossible for people just to fly into Hogwarts. And in the first 2 books, we get instances of this not being true. When Norbert gets collected in the first book, and then when Harry and Ron simply fly the car into Hogwarts grounds in this second book. So which is it? Is it impossible to fly in, or are they able to fly in whenever they want to? First plot hole right there. Now, I would like to say that I do love this series before I go any further, and obviously there's a ton of plot holes if you look really deeply at it. It's for young adults, and it's not a hard magic system. It's a soft magic system, meaning that there's a lot that's left unexplained. However, these next couple really could do with an explanation. Now, when Harry, Hermione, and Ron brew up the Polyjuice potion to go and speak to Malfoy nearer the end of the book, what happens is to get some of the hair from Crabbe and Goyle, Harry and Ron give them 2 cakes that are just on the end of, I believe it's like a banister. They pick them up, they eat them, they go unconscious, and then later on they wake up without their shoes in a broom closet. Now, whilst that's happening and they're unconscious, Harry and Ron, as Crabbe and Goyle, because of the potion, are having a conversation with Malfoy. And it's probably borderline the weirdest series of events and conversations that Malfoy has ever had with Crabbe and Goyle, just because it's really awkward and they don't know how to act as them. And then right at the end of that conversation, they run out with no real explanation, just saying their stomach hurts. And later on, surely Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle get together, and is there any way in the world they wouldn't talk about how they just woke up from being unconscious in a broom closet with no shoes, and him saying, "That's weird because I saw you guys and I had the strangest conversation with you, neither of you remember that," and not putting 2 and 2 together. Now, maybe they wouldn't figure out exactly what happens. It would be a long shot, but it seems like some big questions would have been asked, and at least the teachers would have been alerted. And maybe they were, and our main characters just never heard of it, but seems unlikely. My third big plot hole was Moaning Myrtle. So Moaning Myrtle, she died, and she died, as we now know, from the basilisk looking at her in her bathroom. It seems strange that when she died, nobody would just simply ask her what happened. Now, she wouldn't be able to say it was a basilisk. However, if they knew the Chamber of Secrets was open, then they would be able to link maybe 2 and 2 together, that something was coming from that bathroom and it had big yellow eyes. Now, if we look at Aragog's eyes, who everybody thought was the beast, they're not yellow, they are black. And what that means is that anyone could have put 2 and 2 together, speaking to the ghost version of Myrtle, who presumably was, around immediately after her death, because as far as I know from the ghost, that's how they work. She would have been able to say, "Hey, listen, the eyes were yellow, that spider's eyes were black, it's not adding up." And then the final plot hole. So this last plot hole is pretty much a recurring theme, not just in this book, but in a lot of books. And it's really just communication. Harry could have said at any point to any teacher that he was hearing these voices coming from the walls. And even as a kid, I remember thinking pretty obviously, okay, we've just been found out, we've just been introduced to the idea that you can speak to snakes. And all of a sudden, there's a voice that no one else can hear slithering around and saying kill, murder. And I think if he mentioned it to any teacher at all, they probably would have, taken some big steps towards figuring out what happened. And just to further that point, what doesn't make sense is at some point, Harry and Ron have all the information, essentially, because Hermione has figured it out, and they've also figured out a bit of it themselves as well. So they go to the teacher's lounge, they hide in like some cloaks or some coat room, and they see all the teachers get rid of Professor Lockhart by telling him, "Hey, you should go and deal with it." Now, at any point, they could have jumped out and told all the competent teachers all the information they had. But they don't, because they still think Lockhart is semi-competent at this point. So they go to speak to Lockhart, and it becomes very apparent that he's not competent. So what they do is get rid of his wand, and at that point, they could have gone back and told all the competent teachers, including Professor McGonagall, and although, you know, they don't like him much, Snape, another really competent wizard, all the information. But they don't, because Harry Potter likes to go it alone, and obviously it makes the stories much better, but come on, just communicate. And I have one more that's not really a plot hole, just that I thought was really funny. Right at the end, when Harry gives Lucius Malfoy the sock and he gives it accidentally to Dobby, Lucius Malfoy straight up tries to attack Harry Potter, a student of a school, in the hallway outside of the headmaster's office, and was only stopped by an elf. I thought that was really funny. So there you have it, some of the plot holes. However, I don't want you to go away from this video thinking that I didn't enjoy Harry Potter, because I absolutely loved rereading it as an adult. And here are some of the things I only noticed this time round, and some of these might surprise you. Now, once Hermione finds out that it's a basilisk, we are given like an entry from a book that she's taken from the library. And there's some interesting facts around the basilisk. So you get a basilisk when a chicken egg is hatched under a toad. And on top of that, very strange way of getting a venomous snake that can murder you with its eyes, you also find out that a rooster's crow is deadly to the basilisk. And as a nice little addition to the story, we now know it was Ginny, but somebody murdered all of Hagrid's roosters near the start of the school year. I never noticed on my first read-throughs just how hilarious Professor Lockhart is. And he keeps on catching Harry in what he thinks is him trying to increase his fame. And of course, Lockhart thinks that because Lockhart is obsessed with being famous. So obsessed that he obviously took all of the credit from witches and wizards who did amazing things. There's one time in particular when he catches Colin Creevey asking Harry for a signed picture, and then Lockhart jumps in and brings it to the attention of everybody else. Right at the start of the book, when the Masons, who are builders by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Mason, thought that was funny, are around and Dobby is ruining everything in Harry's room, basically Vernon, Mr. Dursley, comes upstairs and says that Harry ruined his Japanese golfer's joke. And I did some Googling and I thought, okay, well, surely there must be a few Japanese golfer jokes, or not that many, so I might be able to single out which one it was. And there were two, and they were definitely adult-themed jokes, so I'm not sure if they would be jokes that he would be telling in front of his wife and kids. So if you have any ideas on what you think the Japanese golfer joke was, please put it in the comment. This one was very interesting. Now, when Hermione's parents, we first meet them very briefly in Gringotts. Obviously, they're both muggles. And when they're there, they're trying to exchange British pounds to wizard money. So I thought, is there like an exchange rate? And it turns out online, there is an exchange rate. And obviously it's very complicated because the galleons, sickles and nuts don't really add up. They're all strange numbers. But what I did find out was that one wand, as we find out in the first book, is 7 galleons. And as of April 2023, this website has it listed that 7 galleons is $43.20. So there you have it. If you need a brand new wand, it's less than 50 bucks. And we also find out that Argus Filch is a squib, which was really, really sad. We see his quick spell. And what a squib is for people that don't know, is somebody who is born without magical talent or ability from a wizarding family. And that just broke my heart a little bit. Could you imagine growing up with everyone around you doing magic and just not being able to do it? However, luckily Filch sucks and is mean to everybody, so I didn't feel bad for long. We got another spectacular Christmas present from the Dursleys. It was a toothpick and a note asking if Harry can stay the whole summer at Hogwarts, which I really appreciated after we had the beautiful Christmas present in the first year, which was a 50 pence piece. And you may be thinking, okay, well, that's all interesting, but Connor, what did you love from this book? Let me tell you. The first thing is, although there's plot holes, although it's a soft magic system, yes, it's for young adults and you can pick it apart all day if you really want to, there is an underlying brilliance and beauty to J.K. Rowling's story. The constant plumbing problems throughout the course of the year, obviously later we find out that the basilisk is moving through the pipes, and that just sets that up beautifully when you look back through the book. Rowling also makes Ginny slyly a side character in almost every single scene where all the Gryffindors are joking, laughing, or just talking in general about the heir of Slytherin. And she always looks very serious, very worried, and like it's not funny. And when you're reading it through, if you don't know what to look for, that just seems like her character. But then once you do know what to look for, you realize it's right under your nose the whole time, and the foreshadowing is amazing. Also, how J.K. Rowling ties in Moaning Myrtle as well. The fact that we're slowly introduced to this character, we spend a lot of time with her in the bathroom. She also interacts with the diary, and then we find out at the end that she was the one murdered. It was very poetic. Something else that fits into the plot perfectly, not just for this book, but long term until the end as well. At the end of the book, when all is said and done and Harry's sitting in Dumbledore's office, Dumbledore outright says to Harry that Voldemort left a piece of him inside of Harry on the day he tried to murder him. J.K. Rowling had an amazing plan for this story, and going back as an adult, knowing the ending and rereading, I just think, wow, like she had such an amazing plan, and she laid it perfectly from the very first book all the way through, because essentially that is like the big plot twist from the entire series, and she's throwing it in there in book 2 in plain sight for all to see. I also have to say, from reading this book, we get a bigger insight into Hagrid as a child, and he was absolutely wild. As we know, he was trying to keep Aragog, which is going to grow into a huge spider that would have attacked a lot of people if Hagrid hadn't asked him to, and he was keeping him in like a dungeon at the bottom of the school, which is absolutely insane. And this is in Hagrid's 3rd year. He's not that old. And it's also mentioned by Tom Riddle that he was keeping werewolves under his bed and trying to raise them, sneaking off into the forest to fight with trolls on a regular basis. And we know from experience that he had Fluffy, Norbert, and a few other magical creatures as well. Hagrid is absolutely mental in the best way. And that's it. If you have enjoyed, please hit like, subscribe, and the notifications button. If you're a big Harry Potter fan or just a fan of books and fantasy in general, then this is the channel for you. Keep your eyes peeled and have an amazing day.